Well, hello and welcome to another episode of More Perfect Marketing. My name is David Baer. Today we're going to be talking about the topic of thought leadership and using content to get that thought leadership out there into the public so that your business can ultimately attract inbound interest from your prospective clients. And joining me in this conversation is the owner. I want to make sure I got your title correctly because, of course, I took it away from my view on my page here. But I was going to say, CEO, president, some cool, job title like that
That's
of
good.
the content marketing agency 11 out of 11, which is an awesome name, by the way. Angela Pointon, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks, David. It's good to be here.
So I did see that officially you call yourself the president, but why don't we talk a little bit about kind of the work that you do at 11 out of 11, specifically around the concept of content marketing and how businesses use it from your perspective or can leverage it from your perspective.
Sure. So by now, probably everybody has been educated in that they know content is really important. There was a time in marketing where people didn't think about creating content for their company. They were more focused on placing ads, placing billboards, running radio, TV, those sorts of things. But now everybody is focused on content. And so when companies come to us for help, they are typically complaining that they know content is really important. They may have tried it, but it hasn't worked. Or they know content is really important and they can't get it done. So those are the two primary pains that we hear when a client comes to us. And we're there to, one, put content out that works and converts into opportunities and contacts for companies, as well as do it in a rhythmic, methodical way so that we favor both their audience and Google with constantly producing new content by the way of blog posts, new web pages, gated pieces of content like ebooks or tip sheets or guides or webinars, those sorts of things. And then as we collect contacts from those pieces of content, then nurturing them and putting them through automation experiences so that they, in the end, book a call with our client or whatever their entry point from a sales perspective might be.
So, okay, so you just said, they book a call with their client or whatever. So obviously there's a path that people are going to be going down, and the content plays an important role in that. And you talked about a couple of examples of the types of content. How does, if you were giving advice to a business that was looking to get more serious about their content, how do you sort of approach this? What are the pieces that you would say they need to pay attention to as it pertains to where content is needed and what the role of content ought to be?
Sure. So it might be easier for me to answer that with a couple of examples, just
Yeah.
so maybe people can relate. So I, just before this, was on the call with a prospect. She was a wealth manager. So wealth managers work with consumers who either get divorced, inherit a bunch of money, or have money and they just have kind of not managed it well personally themselves. Set up whatever, I'm going to invest in this retirement fund, but I really don't know anything and know what I'm investing in. I'm just kind of winging it. So her clientele is primarily females. And the way that she was getting new clients previous to our conversation was having current clients come to an event and bring a guest, right? Mm-hmm. So, you've got a happy client who comes to like a wine tasting, let's call it, and brings a guest. Well, then she collects their contact information of the guest and tries to book a meeting. What we talked about on our conversation that I found fascinating is her expectation was, well, if somebody's going with a client of mine to a wine tasting event and I'm speaking there, they're obviously going to want to book a call with me and like do it the next week after the wine event. And I brought a different perspective to the table, which was, okay, somebody might be coming because yes, they're coming with one of your clients, but they really want to go to the wine tasting event. And wealth management or managing their money portfolio might not be their exact pain right now, but they might, you might have enlightened them with what you said at that event, and it might be a pain. Or maybe they get divorced later that year, or maybe a parent dies and they inherit a bunch of money later that year, or maybe they're starting to think about their kids' colleges, whatever life events go on. And so the key is really building content to educate them, elevate her in this situation as a thought leader, and nurture those new contexts that she has. Lots of times, especially in our world, we work with a lot of companies that are B2B. So they're selling business services or complex services. Lots of times the pain isn't instantaneous, like my air conditioner broke. Oh my God, it's 90 degrees out. I got to fix it. I'm calling someone and hiring someone today. Lots of times it is not that acute, and it's just something people are thinking about and need to go through a buyer journey with content experience in order to have the reason to finally book a call with the company or with the person.
So let's dig into the term that you just used, the buyer journey, because there are levels of interest or even awareness that a person might be in, and I assume that content is going to need to speak to different people at different points along that journey. Can you
Sure.
talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So just in using that example, just to dig into something with a little meat. Obviously, if I had no idea what a wealth manager is, I would be at the beginning of that buyer journey, right? I'm not in pain. I'm not even educated. Never mind, do I want to have a call with this person? So I need some education at the very highest level on how a wealth manager can help me have lots of money when I retire, or whatever the education needs to be. Then there are people who maybe had a wealth manager that didn't do a great job for them, or they're in more pain because they inherited a bunch of money. They're further along in the buyer journey, and they're at the point where they're more apt to be making a decision as a point of purchase. So for people listening, it's probably not wealth management for your business, but it might be something where you think about, oh yeah, I've got people who barely know what I do that I believe I can help, and people who really know what I do, and they're going to choose between me and a competitor. People at different stages within that buyer journey need different pieces of content. In the beginning, it's all education. In the end, it's education about how what you do is different and better than your competition, so they can make a smart buying choice.
Are there different places that those different types of content go? I mean, is it all blog posts, or is it all social media stuff? Is it, are you focusing on trying to get people to be seeing content at these different levels in certain physical or online areas?
It's a good question. So we think blogging is really important, but it is not the only content medium that should be used. For instance, for people who are further along in the buyer journey, you might think about maybe a client testimonial video or a case study video, something that somebody would perhaps watch and say, oh man, this customer had a really great experience, and a lot of the things that they said resonate with me. I can relate to them. I probably should consider the people that they hired, right? So that doesn't come across as well in a blog post, whereas a customer video might be more appropriate in that case. So I do believe in the mix of content. The reason why I say we're really passionate about blogging is because part of our charge as an agency is traditionally pulling people in at the top of the funnel, right? Normally when companies hire an agency like ours, they want more contacts and more opportunities. So we do a lot of that early buyer journey work to get that end result for the customer.
So, okay, so there's kind of two ways that you have the content in front of people. One is that ungated or open to the general public stuff, and then there's the stuff that as a business you have more control over. What you mentioned the term gated before, which is what prompted that word a moment ago, but also email content that gets sent out after somebody has sort of raised their hand and said, I'm interested in hearing more.
Mhm.
How do you control the stuff that is out in public as much as possible? I mean, are you running ads to it? Are you talked about search engine optimization? How do you manage to control it as best possible in a way that obviously you can control the stuff that I'm sending emails to people who have said they want them? You don't have as much control, but you can probably leverage control in some ways.
I think I understand the question. So we do a little bit of ad work. Um, I feel like the content we produce is very much controlled, right? So we use a lot of tools and technologies to help manage this entire thing for our clients. We are a HubSpot agency partner. That is our tool of choice. In our opinion, it is the best on the market for the clients that we work with. It is extremely sophisticated in pulling together both marketing and sales information so that one tool can be used across the entire organization. But an example of what I mean is if a prospect comes to a website and shows interest and visits, 3 pages and then converts on a form, we will know what pages they visited. We will obviously know what form they converted on, and we can tailor the automation to their user experience. That's getting, down in the weeds and a bit more sophisticated. We always try to start simply at first and then get more sophisticated as we learn and grow with the client. Because if you go complex in the beginning with a lot of controls and you don't know what's going to work and what's not, then you've got yourself a spaghetti bowl to unwind. So we try to bring everybody through the same controlled experience at the beginning and then customize from there. I hope I answered your question, David.
I was asking actually more about controlling the stuff that we don't typically have as much control over, somebody seeing the content that's out in public in the first place. Obviously, you have the ability to track something once they're on your client's property or the business's website, for example. But getting people to connect with the content out in public before you have the ability to move them into your world is a little bit more challenging, but there's ways to address it.
Sure. Yeah. So if for anybody listening that's thinking about, I really should put some content out there, making sure that at multiple points within that content, there are opportunities for them to convert is a common misstep, right? And I'm just going to put this content out there. They're obviously going to find me and then contact me is what we would hope, but we got to make it easy for them, right? People are flying across the internet at crazy speeds, and we want to make things easy. So whenever we produce a piece of content, whether it's on the client's website or on an offsite property, we make sure there are multiple what we call calls to action that would encourage them to download something of relevance, get on a form of something of relevance, register for a webinar, whatever it might be, so that we can capture that contact information and then have control over the experience they go through.
For our regular listeners, they'll hear us talk a lot about the difference between brand marketing and direct response marketing. And a lot of people rail against content because it doesn't work, is what they say. When it incorporates what you've just described, there, which is guiding somebody to the next step, it has much better chance of working, whatever that means, than if it's just a piece of content that is a piece of thought leadership with, well, what do I do next, missing.
Right. Yeah. I mean, look, it's easy for me to smile. I know the listeners can't see that, but when I hear things like that, because I want to dig in and just see what content didn't perform, right? Because I just from doing this will likely look at it and say, oh, whoops, we forgot to do this and this and this and this. So when done right, and by right, I mean lots of different content out there, not producing one piece of content and then saying it didn't work, but lots of different content, right? We're blogging every week. We are producing at least a webinar every month, maybe doing a podcast, producing videos, right? There's a portfolio of content being produced every single month. Then and all the details like calls to action are part of those pieces of content. Then we start seeing things really take off, doubling traffic, doubling contacts in the database, those kind of metrics that people are really looking for.
So all of this sounds like it could be a lot of work, and some people will in their businesses shy away from it simply because they don't understand what the work is supporting. But we understand that it's all about driving more revenue into businesses.
Yes.
How do you address sort of figuring out what is working and what isn't working when it comes to the content bringing the revenue into a business?
Yes. So not to go back to the tool again, but HubSpot allows us to do that pretty easily. So for clients that track everything in there and they set up their CRM and they track deals, we can easily see that, oh, okay, now there's an opportunity at company XYZ. They attended 3 webinars, they downloaded this piece of gated content, and they also read these 3 blog articles, whatever it might be. So that's the kind of stuff that we report on monthly for clients. It's really important because if we look at things linearly and have an revenue attribution model that allows us to show which marketing efforts are performing well, then we can make the judgment call to say, we did not what we thought was an awesome webinar in January, but didn't really produce any opportunities. Next year, let's try something different, right? Next January. So those sorts of evaluations are really, really important, to your point.
So I took a little search through your website, and in addition to HubSpot, there's some other things that your team is well trained in and uses. I know that there's at least one other tool somewhat similar to HubSpot that you guys work with called SharpSpring.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's some super cool tools in the enterprise world for CIOs and CEOs and who are interested in digging into the numbers more. And I wonder if you can talk a little bit about the types of tools that you use and where you use them appropriately and when it's really not relevant to a project.
Sure. So like I said, we love HubSpot. HubSpot is great for companies that are B2B focused, especially because they tend to have fewer contacts in their database. And most of these tools price based on contact. SharpSpring, we use less of, but we are a SharpSpring agency partner as well. And they're great for companies that are B2C that have a lot of contacts in their database, and are priced lower for those types of companies. The other thing that I believe you're referring to that a lot of our clients run on is not a technology tool. It is a operational tool called the Entrepreneur Operating System, EOS. We love working with clients running on EOS, and the reason why we love clients working with clients running on EOS is because they are really keen on what their goals are and how to measure success against those goals. So if you think about marketing in a nutshell, that's really what it's all about. Is, okay, what is our goal? And if our goal is to get, let's say, 5 new clients this quarter, what are the leading indicators that will let us know we're on the right track, right? We've got enough form conversions, we've got enough opportunities. If our close rate is X, and we have 15 opportunities, we have a good chance of getting 5 clients, whatever it might be. And measuring against that, right? So people running on EOS are very well trained about those metrics. So we don't have to do the training for them. We are there to build the content and then measure how everything is reporting, how everything is performing against those goals.
So let's dig into that a little deeper in terms of sort of how that happens. I was thinking as you were describing this of simple email marketing, where you might look, or social media content, where you might see where in some metrics of reporting in your email software, HubSpot, or in whatever the Facebook reporting on interaction on a post, what's working and what's not, and then doing more of the stuff that works, or the format of what works, and stopping what obviously isn't getting traction. But this is a broader on a broader scale. Can you talk a little bit more, about how data informs some of the things that you do?
Sure. So we do look granularly. So, we will look at not individual posts on social, but all of the posts that we posted on a client's behalf over a course of time and try to draw trends. One thing that we often see, for example, is when we post a blog post, it might get a few interactions, a few comments, but when an owner of a company posts a day in the life of them, right, here's what I did today, had coffee, and then I had 12 meetings, and then I scurried off to dinner, those posts will go crazy. Like, people love seeing those things. So that's just an example of when you look at everything all together, you can say, okay, obviously we want to promote the content. The content's really important, but to keep people coming back, we need to sprinkle in posts like this every so often. That's an example of like a learning point. On a more traditional content, we'll review blog posts over time. We are big believers in re-promoting content. So, if a blog went up, that's not its only day to shine, right? That piece of content can be re-promoted over time. So we will look in a longer period of time to see, okay, what are our winners? What are our losers? Because there will be some of them. And what should we do more of?
And that, I think that's a really good point about reusing, either repurposing or simply just reusing a piece of content. It's that same assumption that you mentioned before about, well, somebody sees my content, I don't even need to tell them what to do next because they'll love me so much they'll take action. Right. Well, there's this assumption too that, well, everybody's already seen this, why am I going to use it again? And I assume that most people haven't seen it, and you should use it again.
Yes. Yeah. I might tweak that a little bit, in that if something really fell flat, unless it was posted on a bad day or time, like a holiday or something where people weren't paying attention, it may be worth reposting, but we are re-promoting. What we really look at is the things that show glimmers of opportunity, right? So if a blog post did particularly well compared to other ones, or social posts, it could be any piece of content, we want to get that in front of new people that have come into your universe since it was originally posted. I've re-promoted the same blog post that is #1 on our website probably 5 or 6 times, and then built out a 12 series blog all talking about that one blog post very recently. So we know that is our winner. We are just riding that horse and getting the most out of that. And then we'll move to #2, for example, and so on.
So, and it sounds like in that example, you're seeing that you've struck a nerve with a topic or with a term or something. And so you're just going back to the well and trying to, leverage the success of that by doing more of the same. Is that what I understand?
The original post, to give some context, was 11. We love the number 11 here, 11 ways to nurture leads and opportunities.
Mhm.
And so inside that post was obviously 11 ideas. Um, and so we've re-promoted that original post. We've also taken each of the 11 ideas and done full-blown posts around those 11 ideas. We've made it gated piece of content where somebody can download that whole thing as a PDF, because let's face it, some people like to read things that way versus a blog and trying to figure out where the other pieces are. So we've taken that and sliced it up any which way we can think about.
And that's a technique I've actually seen plenty of people use when they're just looking for a way to create more content. Also, it's like, what else am I going to write about? Well, you can go deeper on something you've already done, or 5 ways to address the thing that you talked about in this other piece.
Sure.
I imagine that's a one of the formulas that you likely follow, I'm guessing.
Yeah, another kind of secret, silly trick that I do, and do this sometimes for clients too. I think it's really helpful is there's a topic that you think of, just Google it. See what comes up for that topic. Kind of ignore the ads, although maybe that's relevant for a different exercise. But who's coming up in that search? Is it an Inc. article or a Forbes article? Is it one of your competitors? Is it a bunch of crap that you could write way better than these other people have written? That's where the opportunity is. But doing just a bunch of random searches yourself, I think, is some of the best creative brainstorming for content.
I love this idea, and I hadn't really ever thought about that in just content creation, but it's something that we do all the time in direct response sales letters or emails. Is we go and what I've dubbed social eavesdropping. We go to Reddit forums and see what people are complaining about or talking about, and then create content around that that's intended for selling. But
Sure.
I imagine you can do much the same in just um, less aggressive selling through other
Yeah.
pieces of content.
Yeah, it's very insightful to see what other people are producing content on. And look, some of it will be so competitive that maybe you just leave that topic to the side because your chances of being found are very slim. But there's going to be opportunity there if you do a little hunting and ideas that you wouldn't have otherwise thought of.
So, there's sort of a point when a business realizes they need this. They don't have the capacity to do it internally, or it's a small enough operation that nobody's really got the time to write or the interest to write, and they go looking for someone who can help guide them through this process. You work with certain types of companies, but not everybody. Why don't we talk a little bit about what 11 out of 11 focuses on in terms of your services?
Sure. So we become the ghost author for our clients. We both write the content for them, but we also execute the strategy of getting it out there, right? So we're really good at not just coming up with ideas, but producing them into the world. What I mean by that is not just writing an email campaign, but actually setting up the email, building the list, doing all the sequences, and building that in a tool like HubSpot. We do that for companies that are primarily focused on business to business. So they're selling to other businesses who are in the revenue range of 2 million to 30 million in revenue. We focus on the United States. As far as any industries, we don't have an industry focus in particular. We do have 2 that we don't traditionally work with, which is government or nonprofit.
Mm-hmm.
And for companies who are running on EOS or similar operating systems, there are a couple others that are similar. We love working with clients.
Excellent. So for anybody who's in the categories you just mentioned, where can they find out more about you?
Sure. 11out of11.com is our web address. It's 11out of11.com. Or you can look me on LinkedIn. My name is Angela Pointon, and we connect that way too.
Brilliant. I'll make sure to leave links to both of those in the show notes. This has been great. It's been a great introduction to the value of content marketing and really digging a little bit deeper into sort of how to think about tracking and leveraging it in business. Angela Pointon, thank you so very much for joining us.
Thank you, David. It's good to be here.
Indeed. Folks, this has been another episode of More Perfect Marketing. If you enjoyed this episode and think you know somebody who could benefit from listening to it, please pass it along. And I look forward to having you back on another episode real soon. All right. Take care now.